Look who finally heard it. Those 3 words, dripping from their lips like poison they didn't mean to swallow. You're different now. Yeah, you are. And the tremor in their voice when they said it, the way their eyes couldn't quite meet yours, the hesitation before they even dared to speak. That wasn't observation, that was fear. Raw, primal, bone-deep fear. Because what they're really saying, what's screaming beneath those words is this: you're not the person I could control anymore, and I don't know what to do with that. They thought they broke you, molded you, carved you into something manageable, something predictable, something small enough to fit in the cage they built. But you didn't just escape that cage. You burned it down, scattered the ashes, and built a fortress they can't even find the entrance to. And now they're standing outside in the cold, whispering your name like it's a curse that might come back to haunt them. Let's rewind for a second, because this moment, this "you're different now" moment, didn't come out of nowhere. This was earned. This was forged in the fires of every silent scream you swallowed, every boundary they bulldozed, every time they made you question your own reality until you didn't know which way was up. They studied you like a predator studies prey, learning your triggers, your weaknesses, your breaking points. And for a while, it worked, didn't it? For a while, you danced to their tune, apologized for things you didn't do, twisted yourself into shapes that hurt just to keep the peace. They watched you shrink, and it fed them. Your confusion was their power, your pain was their control, your silence was their victory. But here's what they didn't count on. You were learning too. Every manipulation, every gaslighting session, every time they rewrote history in real time, you were taking notes. Not consciously at first, but somewhere deep, somewhere they couldn't reach, you were cataloging every lie, every pattern, every crack in their mask. And then came the shift. You didn't announce it. You didn't send a message or make a declaration. You just stopped. Stopped explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Stopped defending your truth to someone who weaponized your honesty. Stopped pouring energy into a black hole that gave nothing back. The narcissist noticed immediately, because narcissists always notice when their supply changes flavor. Suddenly, you weren't reactive anymore. Suddenly, their provocations landed on stone instead of open wounds. Suddenly, the person they could predict, control, and manipulate had become a stranger. And strangers are dangerous to narcissists because strangers can't be controlled with old playbooks. They tried the love bombing, remember? The sudden sweetness, the "I miss the old you," the fake vulnerability designed to pull you back in. But the old you was gone, incinerated in the same fire that forged the new you. And this version, this evolved, unbreakable, untouchable version, doesn't respond to breadcrumbs from people who once held the whole loaf and chose to starve you anyway. You're different now. Let's dissect that phrase, because it's layered with so much more than surface meaning. On the surface, it sounds like a neutral observation, maybe even sad, wistful, like they're mourning something beautiful that's gone. But peel it back, and you'll find accusation. You'll find blame. You'll find the unspoken sentence that follows. You're different now, and it's your fault we're not close anymore. You're different now, and you've ruined what we had. You're different now, and I'm the victim of your transformation. See how that works? Even in acknowledging your growth, they're making it about them, making you the villain in a story where they tortured you for sport. They want you to feel guilty for evolving, for protecting yourself, for choosing sanity over their circus. But here's the truth they'll never admit. You're not different because you changed arbitrarily or cruelly. You're different because you had to change to survive. You're different because staying the same meant dying slowly from the inside out. You're different because your soul finally said enough, louder than their voice said stay. Now here's where it gets beautiful, where the tables turn so completely they can't even process it. They thought different meant damaged. They thought different meant broken in a new way. They thought you'd become hard, bitter, closed off, a walking wound they could still poke at from a distance. But that's not what happened, is it? You became softer in the right places and steel in the others. You became kinder to people who deserved it and a fortress to those who didn't. You became the version of yourself they were always threatened by, the version they spent years trying to dim, distort, and destroy. And now, watching you from whatever pathetic distance they've been relegated to, they see it. You're not just different, you're elevated. You're not just changed, you're untouchable. Every mind game they played, every emotional ambush they set, every time they tried to make you doubt your worth, it backfired. It didn't break you down, it built you up. You learned their language, decoded their patterns, saw through their mask, and now you're fluent in a darkness they thought was theirs alone. Except you're not wielding it like they did. You're using it as immunity, as protection, as the foundation of boundaries they can't cross, even in their wildest manipulative fantasies. And oh, the fear. Let's talk about the fear, because it's delicious in its irony. For years, you were the one afraid. Afraid of their rage, their silent treatment, their threats disguised as jokes. Afraid of setting them off, of being too much or not enough, of existing wrong in their presence. You walked on eggshells while they stomped through your life in steel-toed boots, and the power imbalance was so obvious, so cruel, so total. But now they're the ones afraid. They're afraid you'll expose them, not because you're vengeful, but because you're truthful. And the truth is their kryptonite. They're afraid you'll tell people what really happened behind closed doors when there were no witnesses to their performance. They're afraid someone will ask you a direct question and you'll give a direct answer without the filter of people-pleasing they trained into you. They're afraid of your silence more than they ever feared your voice, because silence means you've moved on, and moving on means they're irrelevant. They're afraid to say your name because names have power, and they know, somewhere in their twisted psyche, that your name now carries a weight they can't control. Think about that for a second. There was a time when your name in their mouth was casual, careless, weaponized in arguments, dragged through mud in conversations with flying monkeys, used to manipulate narratives and paint you as the problem. But now your name catches in their throat. Now it tastes like accountability, like consequences, like the ghost of every lie they told about you coming back to haunt them. They're scared that saying your name might summon you, might remind them too viscerally of what they lost, not because they loved you, but because they lost control over you. And for a narcissist, losing control is a fate worse than abandonment. Abandonment they can spin, control they can't. So your name becomes taboo, a word they avoid, like people avoid speaking ill of something powerful they don't understand. They tell people, "We don't talk anymore," or "they went their own way," or "things changed." Always passive, always vague, never admitting the real reason. You saw them for what they are, and you chose yourself. Let's get into the transformation itself, because different doesn't even begin to cover the magnitude of what happened to you. You didn't just change. You underwent a full psychological metamorphosis. There was the version of you that believed their lies, the version that apologized for their abuse, the version that thought love meant enduring pain. That version died not in a moment, but in 1,000 small deaths. Every realization a nail in the coffin of who you used to be. And from that death came something they never expected. Someone who understands them better than they understand themselves. You know how they think now, the mental gymnastics they perform to avoid accountability, the way they rewrite history 5 minutes after it happens, the projection, the blame shifting, the victim playing. You've got their playbook memorized, not because you studied it academically, but because you survived it intimately. And that knowledge didn't make you cruel like them, it made you wise. It made you capable of spotting red flags in others from a mile away. It made you allergic to manipulation. It made you the one person in their life they can't gaslight, because you've already seen every trick, every tactic, every transparent attempt to distort reality. But here's where your transformation goes beyond just defense mechanisms and survival skills. You didn't just learn to protect yourself from them. You learned to build without them. You built self-respect they couldn't erode. You built boundaries they couldn't cross. You built a life they aren't invited into, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Every day you wake up and choose yourself is a day they lose more power. Every time you succeed without their validation, every time you find joy they didn't give you permission to feel, every time you connect with people who actually see you and value you, it's evidence that their narrative was a lie. They told you that you needed them, that you'd fall apart without them, that no one else would tolerate you, that your feelings were too much, your needs too demanding, your existence too difficult. They needed you to believe you were the problem, so they never had to face the fact that they were the poison. But you called their bluff by simply existing better without them. And that existence is a threat they can't neutralize. The narcissist isn't just scared of what you've become, they're terrified of what it means about them. Because if you could walk away and thrive, if you could heal from what they did, if you could build a life more authentic and peaceful than anything you had with them, then what does that say? It says they were the problem all along. It says their version of love was actually just control wearing a disguise. It says every time they blamed you for the dysfunction, they were projecting their own toxicity. It says they're not the victim of your coldness or your change. They're the architect of their own isolation. And narcissists can't handle that level of self-awareness because it would shatter the carefully constructed delusion they live in. So instead, they reframe it. You're different now, and different equals wrong in their book. Different equals you being damaged or brainwashed or bitter. They can't allow themselves to see the truth. You're different because you're free, and freedom looks like a stranger to people who only know cages. Here's a moment to savor, and you'll know exactly what this means if you've lived it. That moment when you run into them, or they reach out after months of silence, and you feel nothing. Not anger, not longing, not even satisfaction at how far you've come. Just nothing. A vast indifference where they used to live rent-free in your head. And they sense it immediately because narcissists are experts at reading people for supply. And your blankness, your neutrality, your utter lack of emotional reaction is the loudest rejection they've ever experienced. They'd almost prefer you hate them because hate is still connection, still energy directed their way, still proof they matter in your world. But indifference? Indifference is erasure. Indifference is you saying without words, you don't exist in my emotional landscape anymore. You're not the villain of my story. You're not even a character worth mentioning. You're a lesson I learned and moved past. That indifference is what makes them scramble, what makes them try to provoke you, what makes them fish for any reaction, because any reaction would confirm they still have power. But you don't give it to them because you're not playing their game anymore. You're not even on their board. And let's talk about the people around them, the ones who are starting to see the cracks because you're not there to spackle over them anymore. When you were in their life, you were the buffer, the explainer, the one who made excuses for their behavior, smoothed over their roughness, convinced others that they weren't that bad. You were their PR team, their emotional support, their credibility. But now you're gone, and suddenly people are seeing them as they actually are without your humanizing filter. The charm wears thin faster. The lies don't hold up as well. The mask slips more often because they don't have you to help hold it in place. And slowly, sometimes imperceptibly to them at first, their reputation starts to match their character. They might gain new supply, sure, narcissists always do, but it's never the same because you knew them in a way new people won't, and you left. And that departure is a crack in their armor. They can't fully hide. People wonder why you left, and even if the narcissist spins a story, there's a whisper of doubt, a question mark that wasn't there before. Your absence is a testimony they can't silence. Now, I want you to understand something crucial about your transformation, something they'll never grasp. You didn't become what they couldn't break out of weakness. You became it out of necessity, and then thrived in it out of strength. There's a difference. At first, the change was survival. You had to set boundaries or lose yourself completely. You had to go no contact or get dragged back into the cycle. You had to stop explaining or drown in the futility of trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. That was survival mode, reactive, protective, necessary. But then something shifted. The boundaries you set out of necessity became preferences you chose out of self-respect. The silence you maintained out of self-preservation became peace you cultivated out of wisdom. The distance you created to escape became space you cherished to grow. You didn't just survive them. You evolved past them, past the need for their validation, past the hope they'd change, past the fantasy of closure or apology. You became whole without their participation. And that is what they couldn't break, because it's not about them anymore. It never was really. They just convinced you it was. They're scared to say your name now because your name has become synonymous with their failure. Every time they think of you, they're reminded of the one who got away. Not in a romantic sense, but in a power sense. The one who saw through them and chose differently. The one who didn't crumble under the weight of their projection. The one who took the pain they inflicted and turned it into wisdom instead of bitterness. The one who refused to become them even after seeing the worst of them. Your name is a mirror, and they hate mirrors because mirrors don't lie, they just reflect. And what you reflect back to them is everything they're not. Accountable, authentic, capable of growth, willing to face hard truths. So they avoid your name like people avoid triggers. And in doing so, they give you more power than they ever did when they were saying it daily. Because now your name is a legend in their mind, a cautionary tale they tell themselves about the person who didn't need them to be whole. Let's dig into the timeline of this transformation, because it's not like you woke up one day fully evolved and unbreakable. There were stages, messy ones, painful ones, stages where you doubted if you were doing the right thing, if maybe you were the problem, if maybe you should give them one more chance. There was the stage of grief where you mourned not who they were, but who you thought they were, the illusion you invested in, the potential you believed in that was never going to materialize. There was the anger stage where you felt rage at them for the abuse and rage at yourself for staying, for not seeing it sooner, for tolerating treatment you'd never accept for a friend. There was the bargaining stage where you wondered if maybe you could have communicated better, been more understanding, been less sensitive, as if the problem was a failure of your effort instead of a failure of their character. There was depression when the weight of it all hit, when you realized how much time you lost, how much of yourself you sacrificed, how deep the damage went. And then, finally, acceptance, not of what they did, but of what is, the reality that they are who they are, and change isn't coming, and you deserve better, whether they ever acknowledge it or not. Each of these stages transformed you in ways they'll never understand, because narcissists don't do this kind of internal work. They don't sit with pain, they deflect it. They don't process emotions, they weaponize them. They don't grow from experiences, they just find new people to repeat patterns with. But you did the work they'll never do. You sat with the discomfort of realizing you were manipulated. You faced the shame of having been vulnerable with someone who used that vulnerability against you. You processed the betrayal of someone you trusted treating you like you were disposable. And in doing that work, in surviving those stages, you became someone they can't touch anymore. Not because you're cold or closed off, but because you're awake. You see clearly now, and clarity is a superpower against manipulation. They can't rewrite your history when you remember what actually happened. They can't gaslight you when you trust your own perceptions. They can't guilt you when you know you have nothing to feel guilty for. You became the one person in their life immune to their tactics. And that immunity is what makes you different now. Different in a way they fear, because it's beyond their reach. And here's the beautiful irony that probably keeps them up at night if they're capable of that level of self-reflection, which they're probably not, but let's pretend. The very things they criticized you for, the things they used to tear you down, those are the things that saved you. They said you were too sensitive, but that sensitivity made you attuned to when something was wrong, when their words didn't match their actions, when love felt like pain. They said you overthought everything, but that overthinking eventually led to patterns emerging, to connections being made, to the truth becoming unavoidable. They said you cared too much, but that care is what made you fight for the relationship long past when you should have left, and it's also what made you finally care about yourself enough to leave. They said you were emotional, but those emotions were signals, alarms going off telling you something was deeply wrong, and eventually you listened. Every trait they mocked, every quality they tried to shame out of you, those became your weapons of liberation. And now they're watching you wield those same traits in a life that doesn't include them, thriving in ways they said you never could. The narcissist is scared to say your name now because names carry energy, and your energy has shifted from victim to survivor to thriver. They can feel it even from a distance. That shift, that undeniable truth that you're not the same person they traumatized. You're the result of refusing to stay traumatized. You're the phoenix they thought would stay